She choked the game away at the free throw line, and the fans are blaming Tyler Marsh.
Angel Reese just had the kind of meltdown you can't believe until you see it. A missed free throw that turned into a full-blown circus. Fans are blaming the coach, fake stats are flying around, and somehow Caitlin Clark's name is in the middle of it all. But here's the crazy part. What happened off the court might be even worse than what happened on it. Stick around, because once you hear how far fans went to defend Reese, you won't believe the excuses. Everything came down to one shot. The Chicago Sky had clawed their way back, the arena was buzzing, and Angel Reese stepped to the free throw line with the game hanging by a thread. This was her moment, the kind of moment stars dream about, the kind of moment that can silence critics and cement legacies. One flick of the wrist, one perfect release, and she could have turned doubt into belief. But instead, she missed. And it wasn't just a miss. It was a collapse so loud you could feel the air leave the building. The ball clanked off the rim, and with it, the Sky's hopes clanked too. Fans in the front row looked stunned.
We got some controversy going on. We got all the Sky fans crashing out. They crashing out.
The broadcasters stumbled for words, and all Reese could do was walk away from the chance that could have changed everything. But here's where it gets even crazier. The story should have ended there. A tough miss, a tough loss, a lesson learned. Instead, what followed was something nobody saw coming. Sky fans didn't just shrug it off. They didn't even hold Reese accountable. No, they launched into full-blown defense mode, pointing fingers everywhere, but at the player who actually had the ball.
Damn, Angel. Damn. Jag the game at the free throw line, man. It's a lot of controversy going on in Chicago.
The coach suddenly became public enemy number one. Twitter lit up with accusations, bad rotations, bad play calling, bad everything. Some even whispered about referees conspiring against Reese. Others blamed her teammates for not setting her up better. What started as a single missed free throw spiraled into a conspiracy carousel. One excuse layered on top of another until reality was buried under noise. And just when you think the excuses couldn't possibly get more absurd, they did. Fans began pushing out viewership stats, claiming Reese's game was drawing record-breaking numbers, rivaling Caitlin Clark herself. But here's the thing, those stats weren't what they seem. And once you see where they really came from, you'll understand why this moment wasn't just a miss at the line. It was the beginning of something much bigger. The missed free throw should have been the end of the story. But for Angel Reese's most loyal supporters, it was just the beginning. Almost instantly, social media lit up like a crime scene investigation. Who was to blame? Surely not Reese. No, according to her fan base, the real culprits were hiding in plain sight. First target, Coach Tyler Marsh. Suddenly, he was accused of sabotaging his own star. Wrong play calls, bad rotations, poor game management. You name it, the narrative was spun that Marsh set her up to fail. As if the coach had whispered, "Good luck, champ," tied her shoelaces together, and sent her stumbling toward the free throw line. But when blaming the coach didn't satisfy the outrage machine, the spotlight shifted. Next came the teammates. The story flipped to they didn't feed her the ball in the right spots, or they didn't set the right screens. In other words, Reese was flawless. Everyone else was the problem.
Angel Reese has made her triumphant return from a back injury. That's right, a back injury.
And then came the referees. Every whistle was questioned. Every call became a conspiracy. Suddenly, the WNBA itself was accused of propping up Caitlin Clark by tearing down Angel Reese. Because, of course, the league's master plan was to make one player miss free throws on live television. It sounds ridiculous, but here's the thing. The excuses didn't stop there. In fact, they got louder.
Stop coming up with these fake stats. Please, please. Stop trying to compete with Caitlin Clark in the viewership game.
Fans started pushing fake viewership numbers, claiming Reese's games were breaking records and outshining Clark. On paper, it looked like Reese was moving the needle, but scratch the surface and the numbers fell apart. They weren't records at all. They were inflated, recycled, and in some cases completely fabricated.
To get back to what it is they do best, which is the diabolical celebration of Angel Reese's double-doubles.
And here's the part nobody wants to admit. The harder her fans try to protect her, the worse it looks. Every excuse, every conspiracy theory, every fake stat, it doesn't lift Reese up. It drags her down. Instead of facing the truth, her supporters are twisting reality. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. While Reese's camp is busy building alibis, Caitlin Clark doesn't need any. Her game speaks for itself. And the gap between the two is about to get even clearer. While Angel Reese's missed free throw turned into an avalanche of excuses,
that there were something like 15 and 31 when she gets a double-double. You over 15 games under 500?
Caitlin Clark was busy doing the one thing that silences every critic, producing. Night after night, Clark doesn't just play basketball. She rewrites the script of what the WNBA looks like. When Clark steps on the court, the energy shifts. Logo threes that feel impossible, she drains them like warm-ups. Attendance records, she shatters them. So often arenas are scrambling to move games into bigger venues. TV ratings, networks see undeniable spikes every single time she plays. That's not hype, that's reality. And reality reality doesn't need excuses. Now compare that to Angel Reese. Her highlight reels aren't filled with jaw-dropping shots or game-winning moments. They're filled with misses, turnovers, and bloopers her fans spend days trying to explain away. The difference is striking. One player elevates the entire league. The other sparks Twitter debates about why it's not her fault. And here's the uncomfortable truth fans don't want to face. Clark isn't just outperforming Reese. She's building a legacy in real time. Every shot she makes, every crowd she draws, every stat she records is carving her name into history. Reese, meanwhile, is stuck in shadows, more famous for her fan base's defenses than for her own dominance. But the contrast doesn't end there. Clark doesn't have an army of supporters manufacturing fake narratives. She doesn't need them. Her stardom is visible, measurable, undeniable. Tickets sell, jerseys sell, TV deals follow, and no amount of spin can change that. Reese's defenders can inflate numbers all they want, but empty hype collapses under the weight of reality. And that's where the story gets really brutal, because as much as Reese's fans want to keep her in the same conversation with Caitlin Clark, the gap between them isn't shrinking. It's growing. And every time Reese falters under pressure, the comparison looks less like a rivalry and more like a reminder that one is making history while the other is making excuses. If the missed free throw was the spark, the viewership war was the wildfire. Angel Reese's defenders didn't just want to excuse the loss. They wanted to prove she was bigger than the loss itself. And their weapon of choice? Numbers. Shiny, inflated, completely misleading numbers. Twitter timelines filled with bold claims. Reese's games were pulling in over 1 million viewers. Reese was breaking records. Reese was drawing the same attention as Caitlin Clark. On the surface, it sounded impressive, but peel back the layers, and the truth was impossible to ignore. Those record-breaking numbers, many were recycled from last season. Some came from games that happened to air right before Clark took the court, meaning viewers were just waiting for her to play. Others weren't TV ratings at all, just highlight clip counts stitched together from Instagram and TikTok. It was smoke and mirrors, not reality. And here's the problem. Every time fans push fake stats, it doesn't protect Reese. It exposes her. It makes her look smaller, not bigger. Because while Clark doesn't need inflated numbers, her arenas really are selling out. Her ratings really are spiking. Her jersey sales really are breaking records. Reese's camp looks desperate just trying to keep up. It's like bragging about winning a backyard race while the other runner is setting Olympic records. One is fantasy, the other is history, and no amount of spin can close that gap. But what makes this even worse is the cycle it creates. Every time Reese underperforms, her fans scramble to cover it up with evidence of her stardom. Every time those numbers are exposed as fake, it drags her credibility lower. Instead of focusing on her game, the narrative becomes about the illusion around her. And here's the question that lingers. If her greatness has to be manufactured, was it ever really there? Because while Reese's camp is busy bending numbers, Clark is bending the game itself. And the deeper this viewership saga goes, the more obvious the truth becomes. One player doesn't need protection. The other can't survive without it. By now, the pattern is painfully obvious. Angel Reese has a bad game. Cue the excuse machine. Step 1, blame the coach. Step 2, blame the teammates. Step 3, accuse the refs of bias. Step 4, suggest the league itself is rigged. It's a rinse and repeat cycle so predictable you could set your watch to it. After the missed free throw, Sky fans didn't just complain about play calling. They built entire conspiracy threads. Suddenly, Tyler Marsh wasn't a coach making tough decisions. He was a saboteur plotting against his own star. When that didn't stick, the blame shifted to Reese's teammates. They didn't feed her the ball in the right spots. They didn't protect her brand. Apparently, her role players were supposed to turn into superheroes just to cover her mistakes. But the excuses didn't stop there. Referees became the next villains in the saga. Every whistle was framed as proof the league was propping up Caitlin Clark by tearing down Reese. Think about that. Fans were seriously suggesting that officials conspired to make Reese miss open shots and fumble layups, as if nerves and pressure had nothing to do with it. And when even that wasn't enough, the carousel spun faster. Broadcasters were accused of anti-Reese bias. Commentators were branded as haters. Some fans even went as far as blaming the system itself, claiming the Sky's roster construction, the offensive schemes, even the rotations were all designed to hold Reese back. It was no longer basketball. It was a full-blown soap opera. But here's the brutal reality. Every new excuse chips away at Reese's credibility, because the more her fans scream conspiracy, the clearer it becomes. The problem isn't the coach, the refs, or the league. The problem is that in the moments that matter most, she just doesn't deliver. And that's where the story gets uncomfortable, because Caitlin Clark doesn't need conspiracy theories. She doesn't need protection. Her game defends itself. Reese's fans can spin the carousel all they want, but when the music stops, the truth is still waiting, and it's not flattering. If you just glance at the box scores, Angel Reese looks impressive. Double-doubles pile up game after game. Points, rebounds, hustle numbers. On paper, she checks the boxes of star. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in her camp wants to say out loud. Those stats don't mean much when they don't translate into wins. Think about it. When Reese records a double-double, the Chicago Sky's record is still well below .500. In fact, some nights it feels like the bigger her numbers get, the uglier the losses look. It's the definition of empty calories, a flashy plate of food with no nutrition. Fans can celebrate the stats all they want, but at the end of the day, they're celebrating in losses. And that's not greatness. That's survival. rival. Now put that next to Caitlin Clark. Clark isn't just racking up numbers, she's changing games. Her stats don't exist in a vacuum. They lead to wins. They lead to comebacks. They lead to playoff pushes. Her points elevate teammates. Her assists unlock role players. Her presence alone forces defenses to stretch and adapt. That's real impact. That's the difference between filling a box score and filling a trophy case. And here's what makes it sting even more. Clark walked into the WNBA's weakest franchise, a team on life support, and in year one, she flipped the entire culture, dragging the fever into relevance. She didn't inherit a powerhouse. She built one. Reese, on the other hand, has moments that look big until you realize they're just noise in another loss. But here's the question that won't go away. How long can you keep celebrating empty stats before reality sets in? At what point do fans stop clinging to double-doubles and start demanding wins? Because numbers without victories aren't history. They're trivia. And the more Reese's highlight reels are defined by rebounds and losses instead of game-changing plays, the more the comparison to Clark becomes impossible to ignore. One is building a legacy that will live forever. The other is padding stats that will be forgotten as soon as the season ends. And that's where the story takes its sharpest turn, because empty stats can only carry a player so far. The real test comes when the lights are brightest, and what happens next will decide whether Reese can shake the empty numbers label or wear it forever. Here's the part that cuts the deepest. When you strip away the hype, the excuses, and the padded stats, the gap between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark isn't just about results. It's about skill. Reese has length, hustle, and enough personality to make highlight clips go viral. But when it comes to pure basketball fundamentals, the cracks start to show. Her footwork is clunky, her touch around the rim is shaky, and her decision-making in crunch time is suspect. Too often, she turns golden opportunities into wasted possessions. And when the pressure builds, instead of rising, she unravels. Now look at Clark. Her game is polished, precise, and ruthless. Court vision, elite. Shooting range, practically limitless. Decision-making, calm under fire. She doesn't just play her position, she bends the game itself to her will. Where Reese fumbles under the spotlight, Clark thrives in it. Where Reese needs her fan base to spin narratives, Clark lets her game do the talking. And here's the thing that makes this gap so glaring. Fundamentals don't lie. You can't inflate them with fake stats. You can't excuse them with conspiracy theories. Either you have them or you don't. Clark has them in spades. Reese is still trying to find them. But the most brutal part, every missed layup, every botched possession, every clumsy move doesn't just hurt Reese's own reputation. It widens the shadow Clark casts over her. The more Reese stumbles, the more Clark's greatness stands out. And the comparison becomes less about two rivals and more about two completely different trajectories. Yet there's still one question hanging in the air. Could Reese close the gap? Could she refine her skills, rise under pressure, and prove her critics wrong? Or will she remain defined not by her own play, but by the chorus of excuses that always follow her? Because here's the truth. Skill separates stars from stories. And right now, Clark is writing history, while Reese is stuck trying to rewrite her own mistakes. Here's the irony that nobody in Angel Reese's camp wants to admit. The louder her fans defend her, the weaker she looks. Every excuse, every conspiracy theory, every inflated stat doesn't protect her reputation, it destroys it. Think about it. A superstar doesn't need an army of defenders explaining why she failed. A superstar silences the critics by delivering when it matters most. When Caitlin Clark hits logo threes and shatters attendance records, her fans don't have to twist themselves into Olympic-level gymnastics to justify her place in the game. Her play does all the talking. But Reese, her supporters turn every bad night into a courtroom drama. Missed free throw? The coach's fault. Turnover? Teammates didn't help. Losses piling up? The referees are out to get her. And when none of that sticks, they pull out doctored stats and empty narratives to make it look like she's changing the league. It's not protection, it's desperation. And here's where it really backfires. Every excuse becomes a spotlight on what she didn't do. Instead of quietly moving on, the blame game keeps her failures in the headlines longer. Instead of shielding her, it makes her look like a player who can't stand on her own without an army of defenders ready to bend reality. The result? Reese's reputation isn't being built on her game, it's being built on the noise around it. And the deeper fans dig into these excuses, the more obvious it becomes that they're trying to cover something they don't want to face. Maybe Reese isn't the superstar they're trying to paint her as. But here's the question hanging in the air. What happens when the excuses finally run out? What happens when the conspiracy carousel slows down, the fake numbers collapse, and all that's left is the game itself? Because when that day comes, Reese won't be able to hide behind her fan base. And if her play doesn't evolve, those same fans who defended her so fiercely might be the first ones to turn on her. At this point, the contrast couldn't be sharper. On one side, you have Caitlin Clark, a player redefining what it means to be a superstar. Her name isn't just in the box scores, it's in record books, ticket sales, and headlines across the country. She walks into arenas and turns them into sellouts. She takes a franchise that was once an afterthought and makes it must-watch TV. Her legacy is being written in real time, one jaw-dropping performance after another. On the other side, you have Angel Reese, a player constantly battling shadows. Not opponents' shadows, not the league shadows, but Caitlin Clark's. Every miss, every stumble, every meltdown doesn't just hurt Reese's own story, it amplifies Clark's greatness by comparison. And the sad truth is, victories. Reese isn't remembered for her triumphs. She's remembered for the excuses. Think about it. When people talk about Clark, they talk about logo threes, playoff pushes, and historic crowds. When they talk about Reese, they talk about missed free throws, Twitter defenses, and fan bases bending reality. One is building a legacy you can see and measure. The other is building a myth that crumbles the moment you check the scoreboard. And here's the painful part. History doesn't care about excuses. It doesn't care about conspiracy threads or inflated stats. It only remembers who delivered when the lights were brightest. Clark is already carving her name into the game's future. Reese, meanwhile, is at risk of being remembered less as a trailblazer and more as a cautionary tale. But the story isn't over yet. That's what makes this so fascinating. Reese still has time to change her trajectory. She still has the hustle, the size, and the stage. But until she proves she can thrive in the same pressure-filled moments that Clark owns so effortlessly, her legacy will remain an illusion, more about what her fans say she is than what she's actually shown. And that sets up the final question. When the dust settles, will Angel Reese ever escape Caitlin Clark's shadow, or will she always be the player remembered for what she could have been instead of what she was? At the end of the day, the game doesn't lie, the scoreboard doesn't lie, the highlight reels don't lie, and no amount of excuses, fake stats, or conspiracy theories can cover up what everyone sees with their own eyes. Caitlin Clark is delivering greatness in real time, record-breaking shots, sold-out arenas, and a legacy that's already cemented her as the face of the league. Angel Reese, on the other hand, is trapped in a cycle of missed opportunities and louder excuses. Her story isn't being written by her game, it's being written by her defenders. And that's not how icons are made, because true greatness doesn't need protection. It doesn't need fan bases rewriting narratives or inventing numbers. Greatness speaks for itself. Clark's game defends her reputation every time she steps on the floor. Reese's reputation, meanwhile, is being defended by tweets, threads, and finger-pointing, none of which win games. And here's the brutal truth. Legacy is unforgiving. It remembers who delivered when the pressure was highest. It remembers who rose above the noise. Clark will be remembered for rewriting the WNBA's future. Reese risks being remembered for the excuses that followed her every stumble. But the story isn't set in stone yet. Reese still has the chance to rewrite her chapter, to prove she's more than a blooper reel or a Twitter debate. The question is, will she rise when it matters, or will she forever be the player defined not by her own greatness, but by the shadow of Caitlin Clark? Because when all is said and done, one truth remains: reality always wins.